Welcome to Smash Fiction, where we pit two or more nerd icons against each other in a battle of strength, or wits, or really disturbing erotic fanfiction, and see who would win. This week, Mike and Sulley versus Mulder and Scully. Monstropolis is in the grip of yet another energy crisis. This time, however, it's nothing so simple as desensitized children. The world of monsters and the world of humans have begun to drift apart, and now the doors that normally lead to the closets of the human world no longer function. With their connection to the human world's plentiful supply of energy-giving screams and laughs in serious jeopardy, Monstropolis is now having to consider the very real possibility of turning to, green energy. But not if Monsters, Inc. has anything to say about it. Using recently declassified technology from the Child Detection Agency, Monsters, Inc. has developed the Ratzenberger engine. When this miraculous technological device has been fully charged using a combination of energy from both screams and laughter, it can be deployed in a very specific location in the human world to restore the connection to Monstropolis and ensure that the lights stay on. Of course, this means that the Ratzenberger engine needs to be transported to the human world, and Monsters, Inc. only has enough energy remaining to send two monsters along with it. Therefore, they send their best scarer, James P. Sullivan, and their best comedian, Mike Wazowski, through the door. The two monsters end up in the city of Miami, Florida. Checking the digital map on the Ratzenberger engine, they see that their target location is in Orlando, 250 miles away. With a spring in their step and a Randy Newman song on their lips, the two friends begin their journey, hoping to collect the precious scream and laugh energy and make it to Orlando without being spotted by human authorities. Unfortunately for them, it's not long before a tourist snaps a blurry photo of the two monsters. This photo ends up on the desk of one Special Agent Fox Spooky Mulder of the FBI's X-Files department. Mulder shows this picture to his partner, Dana, no nickname, Scully, and, in a dry monotone that disguises his boyish enthusiasm, tells her that this photo represents proof of the existence of two cryptids, Bigfoot and the legendary Beholder. Scully, in a dry monotone that disguises her utter disdain, points out that there's surely a rational explanation for this. The tabloid-worthy photo could potentially be of anything from out-of-season trick-or-treaters to weather balloons. Mulder isn't deterred, however, and convinces Scully to accompany him on a quest to the Sunshine State. Their goal is to collect irrefutable evidence of the existence of the monsters, even if that means capturing them. Do the agents of Monsters, Inc. make it surreptitiously to Orlando and save their world from powerlessness? Or will the X-Filers finally get the respect they deserve by presenting Assistant Director Skinner incontrovertible evidence of the unexplained? I have no idea. But the truth is out there. And by out there, I mean right here in the next 30 to 45 minutes. I'm Dan Mulcairn, and I'll be your impartial judge this week. Advocating for Team X-Files are Colin Mulcairn.
Hey guys, welcome to the show. I made you some snow cones for when you lose. And no, they're not lemon.
And Miles Schneiderman.
There's a scientific explanation for all of this.
Of course. Advocating for Team Monsters, Inc. are our special guests from the Gameable Podcast, Kris Newton.
New Pixar theory, Samantha Mulder is Andy's mom.
Oh, man.
Oh.
All right, stop the
Mind blown.
And Katrina Ehrnman-Newton.
Scary feet, smash!
In order to determine which team goes first, I had the contestants bet on how many balloons it would take to lift my house into the air. Team Monsters, Inc. had the closest guess, but it was Team X-Files that accompanied me on a magical trip to South America, so they'll be going first, because guys, sometimes friendship is more important than winning. I think we've all learned a valuable lesson. Team Mulder and Scully, I want to believe that it is your turn.
You're in luck then, sir.
So let's get started off by talking about Mulder. Mulder is an Oxford-educated psychologist referred to as the best analyst in the FBI's violent crime section. He helped catch many criminals, including a few notoriously dangerous serial killers, long before he ever started looking into the X-Files. He has a photographic memory, an ability to notice tiny details that others would not notice, like in the episode Paper Hearts, where he suspects that a car that used to belong to a serial killer might contain some evidence that would help them with their current investigation, and so he tracks down the car, which its new owner has has been heavily refurbishing and modifying, and quickly manages to find a hidden compartment in the car that its new owner never did, full of the evidence that he's looking for. He was also a so-called Indian guide as a child, which I assume is sort of like a Boy Scout, and he uses the wilderness survival skills that he gained from this training on numerous occasions, like when he's able to spot a faint, muddy footprint that Scully is unable to see on a tile floor, and then he's able to discern from that footprint that it was made by a creature with human feet, but an unusual gait and posture, all this from a single very faint, muddy footprint. As an example of him being a badass at tracking down people or monsters on the run from the law, at one point in the show, he joins up with a team of U.S. Marshals to track down an escaped fugitive, admitting at the beginning that he's never done this kind of work before. Despite this, he runs circles around these so-called experts, including the man who exposed Heisenberg, famed actor / U.S. Marshal Dean Norris. And he's able to suggest avenues of investigation that did not occur to these U.S. Marshals that end up paying off, and he suggests alternative tactics for apprehending a fugitive in a crowd full of civilians that also end up working out better than their way would have. But his greatest strength is his dedication to uncovering evidence of the supernatural. He has shown on numerous occasions that he will forego sleep and instead work 24 hours a day when he's tracking down a supernatural creature, and he's regularly shown disobeying orders from his superiors, disregarding proper procedures and local laws, and putting himself in moral danger, all in a quest to once and forever uncover definitive proof of the supernatural.
Okay, Colin, just stop right there. I've heard enough, man. We don't even need any of these arguments. Is there anything you won't believe? Obviously, these two things that we're hunting are not real, for God's sake. They're not aliens. They're none of this stuff. This is a bear that has been spray painted blue and a plastic green magic 8-ball, all right? Come on.
He's right, dude. We don't exist.
Anyway, as I was saying, Scully. Now, if I was running, say, an X-Files RPG, and one of my players turned in a character sheet with Scully's stats on it, I would accuse them of cheating. Scully is a trained medical doctor with unparalleled knowledge of medicine and biology. That's human biology, animal biology, other kinds of biology, speculative biology. She's a walking Wikipedia, except way more reliable, able to pull obscure scientific facts out of her ass about whatever she and Fox happen to be dealing with that week. And no matter how little sense it makes that she would know that. She's also a skilled agent in her own right, a marksman, investigator, also very good at developing connections and fostering a sense of trust with people that she meets, which allow her to weasel her way into areas that she's not supposed to be in, like when she talks her way into a quarantined federal prison to get more information on the mysterious disease that was afflicting the prisoners. So far we got, let's see, doctor, cop, master manipulator, and what was the other one again, Colin? Oh, immortal! Sorry, did I mention the immortal? It's implied that an immortal dude named Alfred Felling transferred his immortality to Scully so that he himself could die, meaning that Scully now cannot. This is backed up when she meets a psychic with the ability to see how and when people die. When Scully asks how she will die, he responds, "You don't."
Thank you. And just like me and Miles, Mulder and Scully work well together.
Miles and I.
There was this thing that I heard on the radio about how you can tell whether or not a couple is going to last by listening to how they argue. It turns out whether or not they argue is irrelevant, and whether or not they yell at each other while arguing is also irrelevant. What matters is when you listen to them, if their conversation tracks, if they respond to one another directly and stay on topic. As long as all of the lines that they say back to each other like line up and they're not jumping all over the place and, you know, making personal attacks against each other, it means that they're in good shape. Otherwise, it means they're doomed. And you may think that Mulder and Scully do a lot of arguing, and they do disagree on a lot of their cases, but if you pay attention to the words that they're exchanging, it's always rational, it's always about the case, and they always listen to each other, and it never gets personal. Their arguments about the proper way to proceed with a given case are always a strength, and each one makes the other better. They're like Adam and Jamie from the Mythbusters, which is my second Mythbusters reference in 2 weeks. They have enormous respect for each other, and they're always shown being willing to believe each other and give each other the benefit of the doubt even when no one else will. Scully says about Mulder, "I have never met anyone so passionate and dedicated to a belief as you. It's so intense that it's sometimes blinding."
Oh, God, sexual tension. I mentioned the thing earlier about Scully being immortal, but really that evidence is immaterial. It doesn't matter because neither of these two, our characters, are ever going to be in any danger. Let's take Sully, for example. Oh, the big scary monster. Yeah, in his heart, he's a simple dude with simple desires, and he's kind of a sweet guy. He's an office worker. All he wants is to go through his daily 9-to-5 routines and go home. We love him, bless his heart, but he's kind of lazy, he's kind of simple, and worst of all, he's totally a company man. He's totally fooled by the villainous plotting of Waternoose and Randall, because frankly, he's just another sheep in their little sheep pen. Unlike Mulder and Scully, Sully can't see the corruption of his superiors, he can't see the puppet masters pulling the strings, and this means he's either too dumb to see the machinations of people around him, or even worse, he doesn't want to.
And as far as Mike goes, hoo boy, he's tiny, he's weak, he has horrible coordination, and this leads to him comically injuring himself in some embarrassing manner about once an hour. And also, if we dig a little deeper, let's just say that the enormous suitcases that he brought with him to Monsters University are not the only baggage that little eyeball is carrying around with him. He's selfish, He's selfish, he's petty, and he's horribly insecure. All he wanted from the time he was a little kid was to be a scarer. Then he went to college and he learned that, guess what, kids? Dreams don't always come true. He settled for being Sully's coach, and he's a pretty good coach, but you can tell he has so many unresolved issues boiling beneath that toothy grin. He enjoys the fact that Sully needs him, but his self-doubt and self-hatred means that whenever he sees any potential evidence that he's not needed anymore, Mike lashes out in a fit of adorable and inept rage at his supposed best friend, as can be seen when he starts angrily throwing snow cones at Sully when he suspects that Sully isn't giving him his undivided attention.
That's still up to debate. I still think it was the abominable snowman that threw that snow cone.
Finally, while Mulder and Scully make an excellent team, as we previously demonstrated, Mike and Sully get into some sort of giant argument and break up their friendship at least once per movie, if not more often. They work well together when they're working well together, but oftentimes this just isn't the case. And I'm not just going to do the lame thing where I point to the beginning of Monsters University when they are fighting and arguing all the time and say, see, they can't get along, because we all know they get over that. Instead, let's look at the end of Monsters, Inc. when they're stranded in the Himalayas. Sully wants to go out into the cold to try and get back to Monstropolis, but Mike wants to give up, and they have the following exchange. I'm sorry, Mike. I'm sorry we're stuck out here. I didn't mean all this to happen, but Boo's in trouble. I think there might be a way to save her if we can just get down to that.
We? Whoa, we? No. There's no we this time, pal. If you want to go out there and freeze to death, you be my guest. Because you're on your own.
Dang, that was good.
That was pretty good. That was like way better than mine. Man.
Well, that was some blistering and surprisingly personal opening arguments from the FBI over here.
That's what we do.
In any event, Team Mike and Sully, please report to the scare floor for opening arguments.
This Florida job is just another day at the office for Mike and Sully. Get some screams and laughs, get out discreetly. On the other hand, it calls upon Mulder and Scully to get solid evidence of the supernatural, something they have never done. Mulder and Scully are great at finding or guessing the truth, but in this scenario, that's not enough. They have to prove it. Mike and Sully will win this scenario because they're the ones with the tools to do so. Monsters, Inc. sneaks into homes night after night on a global scale in total secrecy. They owe that success to the stealthiness and psychological tactics of their scarers and laugh gatherers, who have richly earned the privilege of walking to work every day in slow motion. And who's at the head of the phalanx when they strut onto the scare floor? Mike and Sully. Because as good as the rest of the monsters are, they're the best. Take stealth, for example. Little baby Mike was so naturally stealthy on a class field trip to Monsters, Inc. that even the tentacle ninja monsters who work on the scare floor could see that he was, pardon the expression, an outstanding pupil. Now, we know that famous... yes. Pause for groans. It's in my notes.
That took me way too long to get.
Now, we know that famous cryptids like Bigfoot and Nessie, those are just average monsters who happen to have been banished to Earth. Even they have evaded human investigators for years. So can you imagine two top agents like Mike and Sully ending up in the back of an FBI van after 1 or 2 days on Earth? It would be like mall security trapping Batman in a ring of their little golf carts. It would be very amusing, but not likely to happen. As for psych ops, Mike and Sully have been masters at that since university. They scared the regulation trousers off a whole group of trained law enforcers in that cabin, despite having no prep and no intel. They're even better at their jobs now, and they can prepare. Monsters University shows these two being trained to assess and exploit human psychology, kind of similar to that profiler training you were talking about. They're going to choose targets in Florida for A, maximum energy output, and B, minimum likelihood to reveal the monster's presence, even to the FBI. Speaking of Mulder and Scully, since we're looking for evidence here, their best tools, which include blurry slideshows and credulity, are not going to apply. Instead, they're going to have to rely on their old nemesis, actual police work, interrogating witnesses, searching crime scenes, and ultimately finding physical proof, not some kid's crayon drawing, but like real big boy proof, like a clear photo or, dare we hope, an actual monster. This kind of police work, though, It has rules, which continually foul up Mulder and Scully's investigations. Parents can deny them permission to interrogate their kids. Judges can refuse a warrant to search somebody's closet for the boogeyman. And because there's no federal crime here, everything is subject to local law enforcement. You just try getting a sheriff to sign off on a manhunt for a northbound green eyeball. Not going to happen, even in Florida. If Mulder and Scully flout the rules, as they sometimes like to do, they will get pulled from the case or suspended, again, losing the tools they need to conduct this investigation. Bottom line, there's a reason that Mike and Sulley are star employees and Mulder and Scully work in the basement. Mike and Sulley do their job. In the FBI, and in this scenario, Mulder and Scully's job is to gather hard evidence. And the whole premise of the X-Files franchise is that they don't. The truth may be out there, but the one place it won't end up is in an evidence bag.
So we've talked about the technical aspects and proficiencies of Mike and Sulley. Let's consider the other aspect of this team that will make them successful where Mulder and Scully will fail. Mike and Sulley make friends. Mulder and Scully make enemies. Let's start with old friends. Mike and Sulley met in college, and after some montage-worthy adventures, emerged as one of the most naturally compatible and successful partnerships in the history of Monstropolis. One of the things that make Mike and Sulley such a strong partnership is that while they may have the occasional squabble or personal disagreement, it never stops them from doing their work very well. And at their core, they share values and are loyal to each other. When they emerge into the swampy, humid wastes of Florida, they do so as established partners who have come through extraordinary turmoil to emerge as innovators, friends, and visionary heroes of Monstropolis with the full support of their community. The only shadow haunting them is Roz, who wants that paperwork filed. This directly contrasts with Mulder and Scully, who are often at odds with each other, with local law enforcement, with huge, unbeatable, conspiring government agencies. And all of these conflicts hinder their investigative power and make it nearly impossible for them to gain the access and cooperation they need for proof in their work. In addition to the support Mike and Sulley have in each other and their organization, they are great at making new friends and allies. Mike has the obvious edge here, as we see him turn Uzma Kappa from sweater-wearing goobers into a lean, mean, scaring machine. But Sully's no slouch. He's the first to recognize Boo as not only harmless, but important, and worth taking risks for. Together, Mike and Sully went from lowly mailroom clerks to top scarers by working together, being the best at what they do, and cultivating relationships throughout an organization. Consider that in one evening, Mike and Sully are banished, meet the abominable snowman, argue, decide they're sick of each other, separately bust back into Monsters, Inc., uncover a conspiracy to kidnap children and extract screams from them, prove they're right, and make some friends along the way. These two accomplish what Mulder and Scully can only dream of. Now we have shown how great it is to be Mike and Sully. Let's consider for a moment how much it is not great to be Mulder and Scully. These two are essentially independent agents who are up against an unbeatable duo. They are frequently divided in their focus and core values in their investigation, and they're much more concerned with an actionable case and personal, daydreamy agendas about aliens than in the people they deal with, thus alienating those people. This is going to be essentially the problem with them succeeding here. They're dealing with children and parents who are not going to put up with some weirdo suggesting deep regression hypnotherapy over and over for their traumatized or delighted child who has run into a comedian. None of this is going to fly. In this scenario, Mike and Sully will do what they always do. Bring out the best in each other and smoothly, stealthily, and successfully acquire energy for their community. While to be fair, Mulder and Scully will do what they do best too. Leave a trail of angry parents, alienated children, and local law enforcement that will never work with the FBI again behind them for yet another inconclusive report on Skinner's desk.
Those are some blistering opening rounds. There's a lot of stuff out there.
There's a lot of hate in this room.
Oh, so much hate.
Yeah.
So much hate. This isn't how I wanted this relationship to go. This cross-cultural podcast. Anyway.
Yeah.
There's a lot of smash and smash fiction.
Never again, you people.
Yeah.
Is this happy fiction? Is this let's respect each other fiction?
All right, let's smash some of each other's points then. We're going to move into rebuttals. X-Files, go ahead and start us off.
You talk about another day at the office, that this was another day at the office for Mike and Sulley, when I would argue that it's really not. The events of Monsters, Inc. and Monsters University show periods of extreme peril and extreme danger in their lives. And that the day-to-day for Mike and Sulley is just, clocking in and clocking out at Monsters, Inc. and either scaring people or making them laugh. This whole being on the run and trying to avoid detection is not their, 9-to-5 job. But it is for Mulder and Scully. And as mentioned in the case of Mulder, it's not just 9 to 5, it's his 24/7 job. They are dealing with tracking people, and uncovering evidence is the only thing that they ever worry about. So this whole attempting to be fugitives is further outside of the wheelhouse for the monsters than it is for the investigators. Also, they do sometimes manage to capture the people that they're chasing. They manage to capture the Jersey Devil before she gets shot. They manage to capture Toombs, who's the dude who can like stretch himself out and steal people's livers. And in the first episode, they managed to retrieve a metal probe that was put into the nose of somebody that was
killed. Yes, they did manage to retrieve that corpse. That was the next place.
The point that Colin's trying to make here, I believe, and Colin, correct me if I'm wrong,
yes,
is that it's not Mulder and Scully's own incompetence that forever holds them back from doing what they set out to do. What does that is the Syndicate, which is the primary villain of the series, and which is constantly working to make sure their work is discredited and that they themselves never get hands on the solid evidence that they seek.
Right. So they do
Like
occasionally
friend
pass
to
some,
monsters.
well, they do occasionally get some evidence and pass it up the chain. The people higher up in the chain them just bury it. That was what I was saying. And if you're saying that they can't act when there's no federal crime, the episode with the Jersey Devil, there was no federal crime that was committed, as is the one when they're out in the woods trying to track down the weird camouflaging plant dudes. They were on their way to a picnic and they just stuck their nose in a local police investigation. That's like half the episodes is they just stick their nose where it doesn't belong because they feel like, what's that?
Fox
Coast
Mulder
Guard
is...
helicopter. Hold on.
We've got a helicopter going overhead.
Oh no, it's the Coast Guard. Let's get out of here.
I mean, you gotta remember that Fox Mulder is an insane person, and if he gets something in his like radar, something supernatural on his viewfinder, it has frequently not mattered whether or not he has federal jurisdiction to go and do his job.
Well, the point
however, if he does,
I was going to say, the point isn't whether they can act. The point is how they can act and what the consequences are going to be. It's true. I mean, don't let me try to dissuade you that Mulder and Scully are awful cops who are constantly overstepping their jurisdiction. But when they do, they actually do have to act through local authorities. Local cops will bring them on. And then when they do start doing things like searches without warrants, now they're without all those tools they need. Like they can't get more warrants, they can't get lab work. And sometimes they just get outright sent off a case and sent home because they clearly have no business there. Like they can get around snooping a little bit, but when they start knocking down doors when they have no business there, it's totally fine for the local cops to say, hey, leave.
But then they don't. And they don't need a lab. They have Scully. And they don't need warrants. They have Mulder kicking down doors.
That's right.
And,
we make our own jurisdiction.
So they're going to corner little Billy outside the kindergarten and just rough him up to get testimony?
Yeah.
They
No,
can't.
no,
we're going to take his lunch money, too.
Mulder and Scully are going to get down on a knee and, like, look him in the eyes and be like, hey, kid, I know that the other people don't listen to you, but we'll listen.
Hey, kid, I have some sunflower seeds in my van. You want some?
But no, there's, like, the time where there's the kids.
It's totally going to work out. And the teachers are going to
let's
say,
be
who
accurate
are
about
you,
this.
strange man in a long coat approaching small children?
Hey, it's a
And-
Be
short
accurate
coat.
about this. Scully is going to be the one doing this. Scully is going to be the one doing this, not Mulder. Let's just be clear.
Well, also,
because one
Mulder,
of those two has
Mulder-
people skills.
Mulder does manage, like, there's the little kid who's getting the transmissions through the TV, and, like, none of the adults are listening to him, but he listens to him, and he, like, finds the notebook, and the kid's written down, like, all these little ones and zeros, and Mulder finds out that it's, like, this computer code, because he could, like, develop a relationship with this little kid, and nobody else is listening to him. So, I mean, they can do that kind of thing.
It would have been great if they would have been able to keep questioning that kid, but unfortunately, the parent denied them further access, and so they had to leave that case unsolved.
The other thing I wanted to bring up real quick is just the fact that Mike and Sulley are adept at scaring people. They are definitely very adept at scaring children and even adult people like park rangers and stuff, but Mulder and Scully have gone up against some pretty terrifying shit. Off the top of my head, I'm thinking about the Peacock family, those inbred mutants they run into. I'm thinking about the Fluke Man, which is just fucking ridiculously terrifying. Leonard Betts is pretty scary looking. There's another Leonard, I think, the guy who's like a parasite on his brother and comes out of him. He's terrifying. The Beggar Man is pretty terrifying. Like, these guys have run into scary as shit people and things over the course of their career. I don't think they're going to be fazed by the big blue furry dude and his eye pal.
They also meet up with the T-1000 in season 8, but that's that's something different altogether.
They never figured out that it was the T-1000.
Yeah,
that was their failure as investigators.
That was their greatest failure.
Is that where the black ooze came from?
Maybe. Any further points from Team X-Files on rebuttals? I'll take that as a no. All right. Team Monsters Inc., what rebuttal topics would you like to bring up?
All right, we got a few just from those opening statements. First of all, Mulder's profiler skills. Absolutely useful to him. He is a psychologist, but He has to understand roughly what he's dealing with. And like a lot of the skills you guys bring up, this takes time. Orlando to Miami, they're not far apart. It's like 3 or 4 hours. Assuming that they need to take longer than that, Mike and Sulley do, to gather energy, we're still talking maybe a couple days tops, right? Maximum. That's not long enough to do a lot of the stuff they need to do. I mean, even getting someone in to interrogate them, getting permission to get access to the kids, let alone creating a profile, by that time, Mike and Sulley are long gone. Furthermore, Mulder's ability to psychologically profile people is totally subsumed in his obsession with the paranormal. I direct your attention to the episode X-Cops, where Mulder initially thinks he's dealing with a werewolf. That costs him valuable time, and at the end of that episode, the monster escapes because Mulder already thinks he knows what he's dealing with, and it gets away before he can adjust his theories accordingly. He's on totally the wrong path. It's a very similar thing to what he's dealing with here. Monsters who feed on fear. He doesn't understand what they're after, and they end up slipping through his fingers.
These ones are pretty brightly colored, though. I think we have to take that into account.
Bright green is not as distinguishable from the general Florida backdrop as you might think. Same with the blue.
As is blue and pink fur due to all of the outrageous, I imagine, feather boas that people wear in Florida all the time.
Outlandish raver gear. Yeah, these
Indeed,
guys are not going to be that hard to, they're going to fit in more than you would think.
When it comes to stealth, you got to look beyond, fur deep.
Fit in? I'm sorry, did you say they're going to fit in Florida?
Especially
it's been a while since
break.
I've been to Florida. I gotta admit, but I'm not sure I saw many people like that.
If you had to name a U.S. state where you think that could be found, I think Florida would be at the top of the list.
I'd go with New York.
Absolutely California.
When it comes to stealth, when it comes to, like, you were talking about analyzing clues, all that stuff, you got to look further than fur deep, as I was saying. Like, you got to look at what these guys can actually do, not what they look like. You were talking about, they're like, this is a day at the office. Keep in mind that until the events of Monsters, Inc., every scarer thought that every moment they were in the human world, they were surrounded by toxic people and objects. It is an extremely dangerous job, comparable to dealing with the most hazardous materials, except they're living beings. It is an extremely dangerous job, and for that reason, they are extremely careful not to leave clues, not to disturb objects, and not to be discovered by anyone but their target. And the fact that this has been going on around the world for years and years, and there's not so much as a whiff of suspicion in the human world, there's no way you can deny these guys are experts at stealth. Say what you will about
first of all, there's definitely a whiff of suspicion in the human world because everybody and their mother tells their kids about monsters in the closet. So clearly this information has gotten out somehow. People do have, not necessarily, it's not written down in the textbook, but kids know that there are monsters in the closets and there's monsters under the bed.
Yeah, and not to mention the fact that they believe that humans are toxic for so long shows how little the monsters know about the human world, and shows that there probably hasn't been a monster who's been in the human world on this sort of like long-term infiltration mission. I mean, they have your occasional Nessie or Loch Ness monster, which are the same thing, Nessie or Abominable Snowman, but those always get dropped off in remote areas. I think if there was a human that had been this kind of deep cover in human society or, Florida for this long, then
I like how you differentiate human society from Florida.
Exactly.
They're two different things.
Yeah,
they're two different things.
Distinct communities.
Then they probably would have learned that they're not toxic. So I think the shows
let me address that. If you don't mind me stepping on your toes a little bit over the X-Files side, there is a conspiracy at work here. Mr. Waternoose in Monsters, Inc., when he spots Boo, instantly picks her up. Notice that. He's the head of Monsters, Inc., and he has no fear of picking her up because he knows what's up with humans. Also, they have photos in the dossiers of these kids and psychological analyses of their fears. They've been to the human world. They've done surveillance there. For some reason, Monsters, Inc. has found it useful to perpetrate the conspiracy. They've found it useful to tell monsters that humans are toxic, but they knew. And that's how they gather the intel that they clearly have on these kids. And now, I mean, we're talking about years after the events of Monsters, Inc., right? And we're talking about some time after. They've switched over to Laugh Gathering. They have even more intel at this point. They certainly know more about humans than humans know about them. While you may say there's a whiff of suspicion because people know about monsters under the bed, like, how much do you really know about vampires? You've heard of them, but you have no concept of what might be true about them.
Yeah, as you can see from listening to last week's episode, Buffy versus Blade, where these two clearly had no idea what they were talking about.
Let's also consider now that the monsters are gathering laughs and not just scares, these kids like these monsters. Many of them may not be especially interested in revealing to this spooky dude their awesome, weird, furry friend who shows up, or this strange eyeball that shows up and makes bad puns and belching sounds, much to their delight and amusement every couple of nights. But they don't really have any incentive here. There's no reason for these kids to cooperate. And for the ones who are scared, there's not enough for them to go, for Mulder and Scully to go on and create anything conclusive. We've seen one episode that I'm confident of where Scully really bonds and cares about a child, and that's Revelations, and it required bloody divine intervention. These people do not normally bond with children. It is not their normal MO, and it's not going to work out well for them in Florida when they really must rely on children and parents to cooperation.
I can tell you right now, those words are coming out of those kids' mouths. Kids are not about to keep any kind of secret about their super cool best friend, the monsters under the bed. That's not happening.
Well, how long do they need to keep any kind of secret? And it's not just a question of what the kids are trying to hide. It's a question of getting actionable evidence from kids who themselves probably don't understand what's happening. Again, this takes time. We're a 3-hour drive from your goalpost here. Like, how long is it going to take?
What car are you using?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're going to be walking.
We do know that the monsters can drive. They do have their own cars in Monstropolis that we see them use. Furthermore, we're talking about 2 major cities only about 3 hours away. Hitching a ride on something, I mean, if it takes them twice as long, if it takes them 4 times as long, that's still like a day. They're not going to have an issue. They can eat trash. They're monsters. They're charming most of the kids they meet, probably. So if you hear anything from them, it's going to be about that, funny blue thing. They're not going to be saying, oh yeah, well, he pulled into the gas station. He told me he was headed to, he needed directions to Orlando. It's going to be, that funny blue guy. That takes a while to sift through, if you can even get permission to interrogate them or to question them, which again, I think you've gravely overstated the ability of Mulder and Scully to get access to these kids. I've got a list here, which I won't bore you with, of like 6 episodes from the first
Thanks
season
for not
alone.
being Dan.
Yeah, thanks for not being me.
It is continually happening. Like, if there's anything Mulder does almost as much as drop his gun, it is alienate families so that he's not allowed to access the kid who has the vital clue. It is a continuous thing that happens in the X-Files. Even if the kid wants to talk, the parents may not.
And that post-regression deep hypnosis hoopla, always with the shadiest part of the pseudoscience. Always. It's just
the FBI.
So you don't raise an eyebrow about their cryptids, but as soon as they start doing regression therapy, that's when you throw up your hands.
I've got my own axes to grind.
Of course, don't we all?
I do as well, but we'll settle it after the episode.
Sounds good.
For the purposes of this episode, monsters are real, and the regression hypnotherapy is also real.
Sure. Well, the mysterious cigarette-smoking figure lurking in the shadows has given me the signal that the rebuttal round is over, and that means it's time for us to move on to the lightning round. Katrina, that was the most adorable lightning sound effect I've ever heard.
I think that's the sound it makes when Hoppy the Marvel Bunny turns into...
Instead of crack-a-doom, it's ba-boom.
Kris, you may be the only living person that I've actually heard say Hoppy the Marvel Bunny, and that makes me intensely happy. But I digress. All right. By the time Mike and Sulley reach Orlando, Mulder and Scully are hot on their tail. They haven't managed to get any concrete evidence on these guys yet, but they are awfully close to doing so, and Mike and Sulley know it. The monsters follow the readout on the Ratzenberger engine into some sort of children's theme park, where they lead the FBI agents on a hijinks-filled chase through movie-themed rides, crowds of tourists, and a giant metal globe in the center of a fountain. Eventually, the engine leads the monsters into Soundstage 21. Filming on this stage has wrapped up for the day, but the set is still standing, including a massive man-made mountain in the center. The Aggro Crag. According to the Ratzenberger engine, the activation location lies atop this radical rock. Mulder and Scully, seeing the cryptids heading for the mountain, decide to head up another path and cut them off before they reach the peak. It's all come down to this, advocates. Only one team will make it to the peak first and achieve victory. Team Monsters, Inc., you have the first go in the lightning round.
Do they have it?
Guts?
That's the one.
I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. On your mark, get set, whistle sound.
Oh man, that voice.
I remember the Aggro Crag and the Elastic Jungle.
I can go through that thing that Mike O'Malley says at the beginning of it.
That would be
Dudes, what is an Aggro Crag?
Essentially what the Aggro Crag is, for those of you that never watched Guts, is a basically giant paper mache mountain that's in the middle of a soundstage, and there's weird mist jets and glittering snowstorms that will erupt out of there. The goal is you're supposed to run up your given path, hit these actuators along the way, and then when you get to the top, you have to hit the final one, and then whoever gets to the top first wins. This is actually for the super aggro crag.
I have to totally rework my argument if it's the super aggro crag.
All right, so
I was gonna say I'm gonna have to move to wait for a later date for this. We need time to prepare for super aggro crag.
That's what the lightning round's all about,
The
man.
lightning round. We had to kill vampires with modeling.
Yeah, that was no good. Yeah, you guys don't know crazy lightning rounds until you've seen a Liz Logan lightning round.
Anyway.
So first of all, I almost pegged this. I prepared literally for Legends of the Hidden Temple. So I think some of that's going to carry over.
You and I are definitely on the same wavelength about lightning rounds, Kris, because that has occurred to me more than once.
So the thing is, this is the ideal situation for Mike and Sully, or should I say Sully carrying Mike. Sully is vastly the physical superior of anyone else in this competition. And not only is he obviously big, strong, tough, and, lest we forget, I mean, you were saying he's lazy. He is highly motivated when it comes to doing his job and defending his friends. I mean, to the extent of putting himself into mortal danger to protect Mike at the end of Monsters U, right? So when things get real, when his whole community is at stake, he's running up that crag. And he's going to take Mike with him, just as he did during the events of the Scare Games. In those games, we saw that not only is he strong, not only is he tough, but he is also surprisingly nimble. He's also able to, evade little obstacles that were set up in the Scare Games. This is right up his alley. He is athletic, despite being a little bit older now. And maybe more importantly, he's up against Dana Scully, who, I love Dana Scully, but she's like 5'0", and I don't think she's going to be able to get up that crag. Then you've got the admittedly somewhat athletic Mulder, but look at this guy's track record. I mean, we were talking earlier about them sometimes going rogue and going off, sneaking into military installations and stuff. Mulder gets caught every time. He's constantly getting knocked over, dropping his gun, getting knocked out, getting roughed up. He basically, the only time he succeeds at anything, the only time I've seen him maybe successfully escape those paramilitary guys who are always after him is when he jumps off that boathouse. And that's because he's falling. There's no way he can screw that up. He just falls into the water.
And that totally works for him. But running athletically up a challenging obstacle course, I don't think so.
Yeah, unfortunately for Mulder, you can't fall up a mountain. Sully is...
You can try, damn it.
Sully is nimble as all get out if the need be. We've seen him dodge all kinds of spiky little horrible jelly things. What else have we seen him get around?
And let's not forget, if push comes to shove and somehow they manage to make it close over on the X-Files team, there's always the fastball special. Sully can throw Mike up to the top to score this first with the Ratzenberger engine. I don't think there's any contest physically. And in terms of motivation, these two are just fighting for a lot more. Also, lest we forget, the misty jets of glitter all over the aggro crag, they're still not going to be able to get a good photo.
This lightning round definitely favors Team Monster.
Well, that remains to be seen. Team X-Files, what do you have to say?
Mulder and Scully do an awful lot of rolling and climbing up
because of the falling.
When they're chasing after.
Well, yeah, after you fall, you got to climb back up.
Yeah. Well, you can see this when they chase the Jersey Devil through the weird shanty town in some New Jersey city, and they also.
Is New Jersey a city?
It's a state.
No, it's a state. Okay, sorry, New Jersey.
Do you want us to edit that out, or are you cool with that being out in the world that you thought that?
I'm fine with that. New Jersey's tiny.
We also see Mulder shoot a 3-point shot very easily in a full suit at one point in time without having to warm up at all. So he's in pretty good shape. And we see both him and Scully in their underwear at various points throughout the series, and they're both
we do.
And they're both in totally good shape, man. And like we said, Sully may be very fit, but Mike is not. And we're probably right at about the point in the movie where Mike and Sully would get into their fight, if we're getting towards the end. So in order to prove that he can make it on his own, Mike probably at this is not going to let Sully carry him. I can climb on my own and just I don't need you.
You want to talk about Scully's height. You want to talk about Scully's height. I'm just saying. One of your people is 2 feet tall.
He's portable.
He's completely portable, small enough to just be picked up and carried. Whereas Dana Scully, much like me, don't even try it.
Dana Scully is she might not be totally athletic, but she is very resilient. She knows all about the human body, its weaknesses, its limitations. I think that would definitely help her in this physical contest. Also, the aggro crag competition is designed for humans to compete against. I'm not sure that the monsters are going to have as easy a time as you seem to think, especially because there's a whole lot of ways you can get, like, not disqualified, but lose points. I think you automatically receive third place points if there's certain things that you do.
Point of information, isn't this a closed soundstage? We're not in this for the points. We're in this to get to the top.
Did Mike O'Malley and Mo show up? And
I assume they are just like summoned to this area whenever someone approaches the crag.
I mean, they just live on the soundstage.
Yep.
Whenever Michael Caine isn't shooting something else, he goes back to live at the
Yeah.
crag.
And he's not on Glee.
He's more an avatar than a human being.
Right. Well,
If you're gonna complete the aggro crag, you need to complete the aggro crag properly, damn it.
and real quick, I'm going to throw in the handholds on the aggro crag are made for children, so I think that Sully's massive paws might have some difficulty with that. And in terms of being in good shape, I mean, Mulder and Scully are FBI agents. They got to be in pretty good shape in order to be.
They don't let you into the FBI if you're not in good physical condition.
You can't climb a little paper mache mountain.
I've actually heard that if you get first place in guts, that's like fast track to FBI. So they may have already done.
Explain a lot of things about the FBI, actually.
Including why maybe they hired someone who can't hold a gun.
That's my new headcanon.
Does he need to hold a gun to climb the aggro crag?
background.
The sooner he drops his gun, the sooner he'll have two hands, the better with which to climb the aggro crag.
All right. Well, you guys have given me a lot to think about, including Colin inadvertently making me imagine Mike and Sully in their underwear. So, thanks for that.
Well,
That would
this
actually be
a
more
video
dressed.
game,
Yeah.
Obviously, it would be an embellishment upon their natural monster glory.
Yeah.
In any event,
Sound
I'm
like
going
you're
to
repressing
go.
some issues
I'm going to go discuss this match with Assistant Director Waternoose, and I will return shortly with the verdict.
Hey, wait a minute, that guy can't be trusted.
It's a conspiracy.
Definitely.
Oh,
100%.
That was really fun.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on, you guys. Your show is so nice and so friendly that I was a little bit afraid that I'm like, oh man, when we get onto this show, like these like nice, sweet, happy, like supportive people, we're just gonna like start, saying horrible things to them, and they're gonna be like, what's wrong with you? But you guys totally brought it so hard. I'm very pleasantly surprised at how killer you guys were at this. So.
Well, thanks.
going for the jugular.
Yeah.
We worked up to it. I spent all week thinking about how can I be surly. Thinking surly thoughts. Cranking up that sass dial. Working my way to it.
I was surprised that you didn't bring up the fact that, like, at the end of Monsters, Inc., Sully doesn't want to scare anymore. I was ready for that to be a big point of
Oh
contention.
yeah, because he has the whole thing where like he sees how much it hurts Boo and everything.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
I resisted my impulse to... one of the things I was worried about was... a long time ago, I was a party whip in a model Congress, and it was like, the only way I know how to interrupt people is like point of order, point of information, point of personal preference. I only did it once, so I'm really happy about that.
Oh, that sounds like my brief stint in Model UN in college, where I immediately decided that this was way too dedicated to the bureaucratic simulation.
Mhm.
I was actually surprised that you guys didn't bring up the big kind of chase scene at the end of the first Monsters, Inc., where they're on like the roller coasters or whatever they are.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that seems to demonstrate like a whole lot of agility and grace under fire.
Climbing all the doors and
Darn.
stuff, yeah.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
I wanted to mention that Mike is tiny. Like, okay, if it's too small for Sully, well, Mike's little and child size. He can handle that. They'll just, Sully will be there.
Yeah,
like,
Sully will
popping
get on
forward.
his back, and Mike will climb.
You know the thing that would actually happen, like if Mulder and Scully did track Mike and Sully down, is they'd all just leave friends. Like Mulder would be like, "Oh please, what Monstropolis? Can I please? Can we go? Can we? You know that humans aren't toxic, right? Totally not toxic. Can we please go through that door? Can we now?"
That
Sully,
would be
come on.
like 3
Sully,
minutes
come on.
before the episode of X-Files ended, and then like, an FBI sniper would shoot them both and kill Mike and Sully, and they'd be like, no, and then they'd take them away in body bags and be like, yeah, we never found any evidence of anything. And yeah, so
And Mulder would be all sad.
yes.
It would be sad.
Let me fanfic this for a minute, if that's okay.
Go for it.
I've returned, but please go on.
All right, so here's what I think happens, because I think, our point, it was an honest point. I think this ends inconclusively for the X-Files guys, because it always does. So what I think would happen is, basically, Mike has his, once per movie fight with Sully and is like, no, I know we can do this. Let's confront the FBI guys instead of trying to just evade them, right? So because they have the psychological profiles, they know that Mulder's thing is aliens. So they set up a fake alien abduction, like with a bright light, like a floodlight outside his window, and they try to come in, and Mike tries to like spook him away and like explain like, no, we're aliens, leave us alone.
And Mulder's all like, where have you taken Samantha?
And then he starts punching Mike. Yeah.
he's initially like curious, but then he immediately sees through it, sees what's up with Mike. Mike has a pratfall. Mulder realizes that Mike's just this weird little goober and likes him and laughs, and it charges up the rest of their canister. And then when he meets up with Sully the next day, Mulder is just wryly like, yeah, I don't know what happened to him. You're right. It's probably nothing. Maybe let's just go home. And Scully's like, what? Because he likes him. He doesn't want to catch him.
The first time that Mulder has ever laughed.
Yeah.
We just hear like he does a little haha, and then it just goes and fills up all the way. So much pent-up laughter.
The whole of Monstropolis for years. Right
I had an emotion. There's no scientific explanation for that.
Oh, man. Yeah, so I've said this before, but I swear I keep getting the toughest matches to judge.
You really do.
It's just like I leave the mic not knowing what direction I'm going to end up falling on. But I think this time, man, only by the narrowest of margins, I have to give it to Mike and Sulley. I think that it, just in terms of like how the story beats work out, Mike and Sully's story is about succeeding despite adversity. And Mulder and Scully's story is a lot more about almost getting there, and then something screws it up, and it leaves them hungry for that next victory, but they don't quite make it. And oh man, it was.
So you're basically saying X-Files is like 8 seasons or whatever of Charlie Brown not getting to kick the football?
No, I'm not saying that at all, Miles. I'm saying it's 9 seasons and 2 movies of Charlie Brown not getting
Well, Charlie Brown left a strip for the 8th one.
Yeah.
Yes. But thanks to Kris and Katrina, not only for joining us, but also for recommending this episode. You guys came up with this idea, and we, on this end of things, thought it was brilliant and immediately wanted to do it. So thank you for both joining us and providing us with this awesome episode.
Happy to be here. Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thanks. It was a lot of fun.
Is there anything in particular you guys want to plug? I know you guys just wrapped up your fun-sized Gameable podcast, which, as Twitter shows, I was extraordinarily fond of.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
It was really great.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, just the podcast. It's the Gameable Podcast. It's GameableDisneyPodcast.tumblr.com. That's where you can find links to all the episodes, and you can find us on iTunes as Gameable Podcast. So it's a very different show from this one, but I think there's some crossover in interest, nerdy people spending way too much time talking about fun things.
Building fun, interesting stories and adventures from little itty bitty minutia from movies or characters or things you like. Yeah.
I feel like you guys are the Freakonomics of writing RPGs. You come up with the craziest combinations of ideas. Your idea to run a Monsters, Inc. game in Fiasco is still the most brilliant thing I've ever heard in my life.
So if you want to hear Smash Fiction, but with more thinking and less yelling, check out the Gameable Podcast.
Yeah.
And this week, Kit is going to thank Anton Mullane. Thank you so much for pimping the Buffy and Blade episode. And I feel like you probably pimped some other ones.
Dude, he pimps all the episodes.
Yeah.
Anton is the man, and we got to have him on again sometime.
Yes, we do. And we'd love to have you guys on again, Gameable. That was amazing.
Yeah, that was really fun. If you guys ever want to jump on again, just let us know. So thank you for joining us this week on Smash Fiction. Next week, Spinal Tap versus Flight of the Conchords.
Smash Fiction is produced by Miles Schneiderman, with logo designed by Colin Mulcairn.
Special thanks to Kevin MacLeod for our theme song, which is called Hitman. You can find his work at www.incompetech.com.
You can follow the Smash Fiction podcast on Twitter at SmashFicPodcast and search for us on Facebook and Tumblr.
Subscribe on iTunes, and if you leave us a good review, we shall become more powerful than you can possibly imagine.
If you have any suggestions, feedback, or other contributions, send them to us at smashfictionpodcast@gmail.com and help us continue the fight.
He's helped catch many criminals, including a funatoriously dangerous serial killers.
Wait, I'm sorry. Colin, start from he helped catch many criminals, please.
Kris and Katrina, you guys are getting to see the sausage made this week.
I combined those words into funeratoisely.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
It was an awesome new word.
Funatoisterly.